At the westernmost limits of Britain sit two proud neighbours. Devon.
No one ever sees the scenery that I see, and it is absolutely fantastic.
And across the River Tamar, Cornwall.
How can you not walk through this and feel your soul lift?
Whether drawn here...
It was amazing going through the tunnel for the first time. It was cool.
Or born here.
Good to meet you. I'm Jack. What's your name?
There are many deep-rooted folk.
Our family's been doing that in Devon since the 1300s. There's nowhere better, is there?
Living off the lush lands.
Gorgeous runner beans. They're going to the market tomorrow.
And stunning seas.
Look at those beauties. You can't get fresher than that.
Passionately preserving traditions, old.
Being a Cornishman to work on this is a very special moment.
And new.
I'm massively competitive, but I want to just live that childhood dream.
In the place they call home.
We pinch ourselves every day. So lucky to be able to call this home.
These are their stories. This is Devon and Cornwall. "28 miles off Land's End floats the enchanting archipelago, the Isles of Scilly. Wild in its beauty, here life rolls by at its own pace. A far cry from the stresses and strains of life on the mainland.
This variety are a red variety called Rondo, and they make a very nice red wine.
A haven for people like Thelonian Val Thomas and her husband Graham, who returned to St. Martin's 25 years ago to plant the first vines at Val's childhood home.
It was an amazing flower farm. Mostly, it would have been daffodils. These were all bulb fields, so we, not wanting to sound immodest, we have set up a working vineyard.
St. Martin's is the northernmost of the 5 inhabited Scilly Islands, with rugged cliffs to the north and tropical white sandy beaches and turquoise seas to the south. Although the vineyard is surrounded by stunning scenery, the island isn't the most favourable spot for growing grapes, thanks to salty sea winds and harsh winter storms.
We were the first to try it here. You know, it's not the ideal place to have a vineyard, but the priority was to live here.
Against the odds and adverse weather, Val and Graham have built up a successful winery over the years, producing up to 3,000 bottles annually and running tours and tastings.
But it has been a labour of love, but it's had so many interesting consequences. We've even met the Queen on the back of being here, which was very special,
Lovely,
I have to
yeah.
say. She seemed really interested, didn't she?
Yeah.
But now into their 70s, the physical demands of looking after the 2.5-acre vineyard make it a back-breaking business. So 2 years ago, they reluctantly decided to lay down their secateurs and retire.
It was best to give up before you really sort of left it go to wreck and ruin. It was still tidy, and it was time to give up because we knew that the old arthritis was kicking in, etc., you know, and losing hair and all that sort of thing. So we couldn't really carry on much longer.
Finding the right people to take on their beloved business proved tricky.
We did ask on the island because accommodation is always an issue. And I think people knew how much hard work it was. and there were no youngsters that were able to take it on.
By chance, a timely yarn with a young couple visiting the vineyard on holiday proved to be just the job.
About a dozen in the tour. Holly and James were part of that. And I just threw away lines, said, well, anyone wants to buy a vineyard, just let me know. And they went away, thought about it, and telephoned us. Emailed us. Said, "Were you serious?" So,
I picked the email up, but unfortunately, I
so
said
we
yes.
went from there.
8 months ago, Holly Robbins and James Falconbridge set sail from Nottinghamshire and dropped anchor here on St Martin's to learn the ropes from Val and Graham. And they haven't looked back.
It's amazing now the sun's come out.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Such a difference from this morning.
Yeah.
Perfect apple picking weather, I think.
It's a world away from their previous lives, especially for Holly.
I used to spend my entire life travelling on a plane back and forth to Europe, and then spending the entire day sat in front of a computer looking at spreadsheets and presentations. So for me, it couldn't be really further from what I was doing before. The hardest part was leaving behind family and friends, really. They were all super supportive and they all knew that it was the right thing for us to do. Can't imagine going back, can you?
Nope, not unless they make us.
No chance. No, it's been great. People have been so welcoming, so friendly. We had such a warm welcome when we got here.
Just like the fruit, Holly and James have been hand-picked by Val and Graham, who are enjoying passing on their expert knowledge of wine with a handy hint and a tipple or two.
This one here is the Sauvignon Blanc, very good with seafood. A blend of 2 grape varieties, Reichensteiner, and the other one is probably my favourite, Ziegeriba, nose. The wine critic, Gilly Golden, recommends, in order to spread the wine over your tongue, you should pucker your lips, rather reminiscent of a bulldog's bottom, and then suck the air in as you... like that. That's a fantastic bulldog's bottom you have there.
I finally found my thing in life, right?
What spot could be better to raise a toast to vineyard ventures past and present?
We'd like to wish you all the happiness and success and joy of running a vineyard that we've actually been privileged to have.
Second that.
Thank you, and to a very long and happy retirement.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hand-picked Holly and James may be, but with the last of the grape harvest on the horizon, will they live up to Val and Graham's great expectations? Devon's dairy herds, her milking cows, are made of the white stuff. Churning out nearly 6 billion pints every year, these girls help make the county Britain's biggest producer of dairy products. But in an ever-changing world, dairy farms of all sizes need to adapt and innovate to survive.
I don't think you could be a farmer without being passionate about what you're doing. Not many people would sit in a harvester all night when they know there's rain coming, or would get out at 4 o'clock in the morning to milk your cows.
In South Devon, near the pretty village of Chillington, lies Coleridge Farm, where Matt Dark runs the family business with his dad Richard and his brother Sam.
Right, let's go through and feed the calves, shall we? Right, shall we go then, Jack?
Together, they manage over 1,000 acres of crops, sheep and cattle. And with such a spread, there's a never-ending to-do list.
So we're feeding the calves barley and a bit of protein mix to help their growth.
And even the youngest family members have to pitch in.
And the next one. That's right. All done?
The farm has been in the family for 60 years, but it's a constant challenge to keep the business profitable.
For us, it's massively important to keep the family farm going. It's our livelihood, it's what we as a family survive off. When you've seen your great-grandfather on the farm and then the work that grandfather and great-uncles have done to build the farm up to where it is at the moment, you kind of don't want to let the rest of the family down. And you want to try and keep something like this going and improving.
To ensure their farm survives, the family plan to increase their dairy herd from 250 to 400 cows. And radical changes are in the pipeline for their milking parlour too.
These are milking robots. The cows will come in, milk themselves.
Although the system was cutting edge when installed, the old robots are no longer up to the job.
Oh no, she doesn't need milking. Come on, Dad. See, they can come in when they don't need milking.
With 35 years' experience of running the farm, Dad Richard knows it's time for another change.
The robots have come to their useful end with us because we simply need to expand, get bigger, and keep the Dark family going, really. We've got a growing family here that needs feeding. We'll be able to buy in more cows, bump up the numbers, and get to where our bank manager would like us to be, really.
The solution? A shiny new but manually operated milking parlour. It means their growing herd can be milked much quicker, and more milk means more money.
This is the new rotary parlour that we're putting in. The main reason we've chosen the rotary is just the speed of milking and the throughput that we can have of cows. We're hoping to be around the 200 cows an hour through this. So between my brother, father and myself, we can try and do all the milking ourselves and do the job efficiently.
It's a huge investment for the farm, but it's a risk they're willing to take to protect everything the family has worked for over the years.
With business, like anybody would say, standing still isn't an option. So if you don't go forward with the times and go forward improving things, you're gonna get left behind at some point.
And with the spanking new system installed, it's now crucial to get it up and running and milking the moo juice as soon as possible.
Yeah, really pleased with how all the building's gone. We're hopefully going tomorrow. So, yeah, still a lot of work to be done. But at the moment, yeah, really pleased with how it's all gone in.
For the Dark family, it's a critical next step for their farm's future. But will it do the job? Later, on Devon and Cornwall...
This, my lovelies, this is what we're looking for.
Can Cornishman Will clinch a groundbreaking record for his homeland?
We are building what will become the largest classical labyrinth in the world.
And can diver Fred clear dangerous debris dumped off the Cornish coast?
When you see gear underwater, you don't want to get tangled up. Somebody's always looking out for you.
Goon Bren, that's Cornish for Bodmin Moor, an area of outstanding natural beauty, but also a place as tough as the hard rock bones of the granite kingdom of Cerno. Cornwall's spine of rocky outcrops erupted more than 280 million years ago, and the stones hewn from them have helped shape the Cornish landscape for millennia. These stones, combined with earth, turf and trees, create the Cornish Hedge, a structure not so much a simple boundary, but more a living being.
The thing that has most shaped our landscape, if we take a sidestep around mining for 1 minute, is the Cornish Hedge.
And one Cornishman is on a quest to celebrate these ancient structures.
To my mind, the most significant human intervention into our gorgeous landscape is actually the Cornish Hedge. Now, that's not what in England they call the fuzzy green bushes in a row. In Cornwall, a hedge is two faces of stone. It's very distinctive and it does an incredible job in terms of 600 species of flowering plant, 10,000 species of invertebrate and pollinators, and it crisscrosses the whole of Cornwall and defines the landscape.
Right at the heart of Bodmin Moor lies Colliford Lake in the parish of St Neot. And it's here on the shores of Cornwall's largest man-made reservoir that Will Coleman is raising the profile of the Cornish Hedge and involving one and all in his project.
They drowned this valley in the early 80s. And there used to be Cornish hedges running across this valley. And of course, they've all dissolved away and the rocks have fallen down and landed on the subsoil, etc. So we are building what will become the largest classical labyrinth in the world. Just here at Colliford Lake, in the middle of Bodmin Moor, entirely out of Cornish Hedge.
Known as Codroia in Cornish, the landmark labyrinth will be 56 metres in diameter and require a staggering 600 tonnes of granite.
This, my lovelies, this is what we're looking for. This is, look at the coarse grain on that. That's Bodmin Moor granite that has been in a hedge.
So today, Will, as the Codroia project's artistic director, has enlisted a crew of 35 volunteers on the banks of the lake to reclaim and recycle a valuable local resource.
Over the summer, we were watching the water go further and back, and the further it went back, the more and more stones were appearing, and we went, hang on a minute. Here we are, on site, only a couple hundred yards from where we want to build hedges, with perfect recycled Cornish hedge stone that somebody has already pre-selected for you to build hedges.
With each bucket weighing more than 100 pounds...
Just chuck a couple of big ones on.
OK.
Will's drafted in some heavy horsepower to help the volunteers with the lumping and loustering.
Of course, it being a drinking water reservoir, we're not allowed to bring diesel vehicles of any kind onto the shore. And so we got in touch with David Jones, with his oss and his team of osses, because they can then drag the sledge across. It may look like some Egyptian slave army building a pyramid, but these are all willing volunteers lured by a proper Cornish pasty.
While the granite grafting continues at the lakeside, just half a mile away, another vital piece of the Codroia project is taking shape.
When something like Codroia happens, it's quite a big deal for the area, really, and you just want to get involved.
Metal sculptors Gary and Thomas Thrussell are creating what will become the centrepiece.
This is a tiny version of the 1.5-metre labyrinth artwork, which is going to go at the centre of Codroia to celebrate Cornish heritage and Cornish hedging. This artwork and the wider Codroia site is something that's actually not just for a few decades, but actually a few centuries, if not millennia. So it's quite exciting, really, and I think that's why we're so passionate about getting this project and then doing our best on it.
What makes it really special, it's not a standalone piece of artwork, it's actually the centrepiece to somebody else's artwork, who are the Cornish Hedges, which kind of feels special in a way.
With the deadline for their finished sculpture just weeks away, Gary and Thomas really have their work cut out to complete it on time. From Crackington to Carbis Bay, from Porthcurno to Port Wrinkle, Cornwall is home to some of the cleanest and best-kept beaches in Britain. But you don't need to dive too deep beneath the waves to discover a very different story, one of jettisoned junk and deadly cast-off fishing gear. One man dedicated to ridding the ocean of this rubbish is Cornish diver Fred Nunn.
Beach cleans are great because people see it and it's an instant gratification of that beach is now clean. Whereas there's so much historical stuff that's been dumped in the seas and it's out of sight, people aren't seeing them, and we've decided to do something about it.
Marine conservationist Fred has arrived at Mylor Harbour on the Fal Estuary to meet up with the rest of his team from Ghost Fishing UK. It's estimated around 640,000 tonnes of fishing equipment known as ghost gear is lost overboard or discarded in the world's oceans every year. For sea life globally, it's a deadly threat. And Fred and his team know it's a huge problem along the Cornish coast too, one which needs tackling head-on.
Cornwall's got one of the largest fisheries in the country, so it's not surprising that we get a lot of loss. ghost fishing gear down here. We've got a big list of priorities to get to, and the list at home is getting longer and longer of jobs that I'm not doing because I'm out here doing this.
Today, the team's heading out on the hunt for a cluster of lost lobster pots, which have been reported lurking on the seabed off Falmouth.
We're looking for old anti-submarine cables which have been left in the bay since the Second World War, and this string of pots been reported to be tangled up in one of those.
With 20 years' experience under his diving belt, Fred knows each job clearing snagged gear from rocks and wrecks can be extremely dangerous.
Everybody grab a knife.
So safety planning is vital.
It's a situation that when you see gear underwater, you normally swim in the other direction. You don't want to get tangled up. So carrying the knives and working in a team of 3, so somebody's always got your back, somebody's always looking out for you.
With the suspect site located, Fred takes the plunge down to a depth of 35 meters. Here, visibility can become very poor, and the risk of becoming entangled means Fred and his team have to keep their wits about them. But they soon locate the stray string of lobster pots and float them up to the surface support vessel.
Any recreational diver can report lost gear, fishermen can report lost gear, which gives us targets to go and try and recover. They're expensive, they're about £100 a pot, so a fisherman doesn't want to lose this equipment. It's usually down to the weather, another vessel coming over and cutting the rope accidentally in poor conditions.
With half a dozen pots recovered, it's been a successful operation. And for Fred, the good news is they've also rescued some marine life.
This is a very large edible crab. Because the fishermen can no longer monitor the string, this would have gone to waste. So we'll get this chap back in the water. See you, George. We'd rather return them to the sea to give them a chance to recover.
The other good news is that not only is the sea life safe, the pots won't end up in landfill.
We're returning the ones that we've collected today. They're in good condition, so they can go straight back into use. The 3 R's: reduce, reuse and recycle.
With marine pollution a growing global problem, Fred and his team are determined to make sure, in Cornwall's case, their coast and their conscience is clear. Later, on Devon and Cornwall, novice wine growers Holly and James gather in their very first grapes.
Spot on.
But veteran vintner Val fears the worst.
It's a poor harvest and not a good start to a new business.
And it's D-Day at the docks. But will their new milking parlour deliver?
Cows aren't used to going somewhere that's completely clean and strange.
On the beautiful island of St Martins, on the Isles of Scilly, new vineyard owners Holly Robbins and James Falconbridge are hoping their grapes are ripe for harvesting.
Holly's going to check the sugar levels using the refractometer. The amount of sugar we have to begin with dictates what the final alcohol level will be.
Testing the grapes will show if they have the right sugar content to make enough alcohol to turn into wine.
There's a blue line that passes down the scale, and the point at which that stops is the sugar content. That's telling me we're at 20.
Excellent. So that should give us a potential alcohol of around 11 to 11.5%. So I think that's good to go. We're ready to harvest.
The numbers are looking good, but there's no tests like the taste test.
You know, it never hurts to double-check these things.
Final test.
Spot on. I think we're ready to go.
I think so. Perfect.
It's Holly and James's first fruit harvest since following in the footsteps of previous owners, Val and Graham Thomas.
Are you ready then, Val? We'll race you to the top.
Who have returned to help out and offer the benefit of their experience as the vineyard transitions from old hands to new kids on the block.
This is the final crop to come in this year, and these ones are Orion, so it's kind of like our flagship wine, really.
We had the issue early on in the year where the winds came through at the sort of end of May, early June time, and they've made quite sort of sparse bunches, but the grapes that are there are looking quite a nice size.
The unique weather system on the Isles of Scilly is an issue Val and Graham have become very familiar with over the years.
The biggest enemy is the wind.
Yeah.
You have to work with it.
There are certain varieties we've researched, and Orion, which we're picking now, are fairly resistant. You wouldn't really get away with planting things like Chardonnay.
Their expert knowledge is invaluable to the young couple in their inaugural year of winemaking.
Graham, he's even bequeathed to us his book of secrets, which is where all of the key information is about the blends and all of the measurements of levels and all of the kind of things that they've done in the past. So we're lucky to have it.
And knowing the challenges that lie ahead, Val and Graham are keen to support them.
It is a big challenge for them because it's a poor harvest and not a good start to a new business. But look at where we are. I mean, I think that's the bonus, and it makes it worthwhile. I never get tired of the views here because it's always changing. The colours change, clear air, no pollution.
It's an enchantment shared by Holly and James, as St Martin's already has them well and truly under its spell.
It's one of those lovely things you'd love to have shown your sort of previous self, just a little snapshot forward to what you'll be doing in sort of 2 years' time. And I think if I'd seen the grapes and seen the view and the setting, I'd have been quite surprised by the turn that your life takes, but very pleased. It certainly beats being stuck in front of a computer.
But it'll take some training before they can pick at the pace of the older generation.
Val and Graham are just storming away. I don't think we're ever going to catch them now. Yeah, another 25 years and we might be able to catch them up.
With the grapes safely gathered in, the bounty can be lugged to the winery. And for Val, it's a trip down memory lane.
When we started, this is all we had, this little basket press. So you put the fruit in there, wind it down, and it's quite a nice sight when you see the juice coming through. Now it's mainly used for apples, or small quantities of grapes.
Despite the lure of a leisurely retirement, leaving her childhood home is still a wrench.
I've got mixed feelings of handing over the reins because it's been part of me growing up on a farm. And this was the sort of jewel in the crown, really. But I know that now into my 70s, I'm physically not able to do all the things that you need to do. It's time, it really, yes, if I'm honest.
It may be a year of first fruits for Holly and James, but it's the end of an era for Val and Graham.
I really consider myself very lucky because we've loved every minute of this, so I can't complain, really. And always available should they need it. A wine consultant of the island.
As Graham calls time on the grape harvest for one last year,
For whom the bell tolls.
it's time for Holly and James to go it alone as they start the winemaking process.
We'll let you know how it goes.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye then.
Take care.
But without their trusty native guides, can they pull off a vintage worthy of the vineyard? On Coleridge Farm near Chillington in South Devon, brothers Matt and Sam Dark and their dad Richard are cranking up their brand new rotary milking system for the first time.
Are we all sorted in here with water?
We've got some last few pipes to put onto the tanks. The tank's doing a wash at the moment.
They're going back to basics with a system that employs old-fashioned human beings instead of robots, yet should allow them to double the numbers in their dairy herd.
Today is the day that we're going to be turning the milking robots off and starting up our new milking system, really. So there is a lot of last-minute preparation. Things aren't going to be perfect today. There's a few doors and windows missing, and there's, yeah, a few gates that aren't quite ready to go, but work in progress, I think, is the way to put it. Get some cows out, bring them up.
Yeah, we want to get all this yard wet.
Or just all this bit anyway.
Let's get all this damp.
Where is it, Jack? We've put a wash through the tank, so yeah, that's all thick and span ready for milk. And then this is, I think, the last wash going through for today. There's been like 3 or 4 washes gone through. Don't want anything to contaminate anything at this point.
It's all change on the farm, but that's nothing new to Dad Richard.
We've seen 1, 2, 3. This will be the 4th milking system in place at Coleridge, just in my lifetime, in the 35 years that I've been actually working on the farm.
Being always ready to move with the times is an attitude Richard has passed on to his sons, and Matt is proud to be taking the farm forward, following in his father's footsteps.
He's put pretty much the whole of his life's work into the farm, and then to see this sort of step going forward, I think it's going to be a sense of achievement. Proud to be a part of it as well, I think.
The first task is to introduce the cows to the newfangled milking parlour.
Here, come here. Left. Hey.
As expected, I think. Cows aren't used to going into somewhere that's completely clean and strange. This is a new collecting area for them as well. They're between 500 and 600 kilos each, these animals, so that we're being very gentle, because at the end of the day, we need the milk, and we need it to be a pleasant experience first time, to encourage them to go on again early tomorrow morning for a start.
Once the cows have filed into the parlour, Matt and Sam will have to persuade them to get on board the gently rotating platform, 44 at a time. And there's a lot for the cows to get their heads round.
Totally new thing. Walking up to something that's moving, like there's a inch gap there. To someone who never walked over like gaps like that, that's like the Grand Canyon to them. So, yeah, I'm quite pleased at how well they are coming up.
As the platform rotates, the brothers attach milking clusters to the cows' teats, and 10 minutes later, they're milked back out to pasture.
Yeah, being pushed onto somewhere new, it's all stressful for them, hence why they are doing making a bit more mess. Keep your head down and make sure you avoid everything that's coming.
With cautious cows, it's a tough task, but after a total team effort, the whole herd is eventually through.
As far as first milkings go, I think it's gone very well. If you were to look at the cows in the shed there now, they're all lied down, eating food, like chewing their cuds, and you wouldn't think that they've been put through a whole new system. You do this a couple more times, and it'll be their routine, and it'll be a dream for them, like for us, hopefully, and for them.
Coleridge Farm has been in the Dark family for 60 years, and now, thanks to the new rotary system, they can expand their dairy herd. And for the next generation of Devon's dairy farmers, the future is looking much brighter.
Really rewarding to see the hard work that everybody's done putting in this new project. Kind of pay it off already just by getting the first milking through. Nice to feel that I'm a part of the next chapter, really, of taking the farm forward and keeping the family business running. To be quite honest, we're looking forward to a few coldens tonight, just to sit back and reflect on the day and look forward to the future, really.
Later on Devon and Cornwall,
Can we have another pair of hands on here? Thomas, you stand up.
Will worries whether the Thrussell's half-ton centrepiece will land safely at its final destination.
We've now got to see if their millimetre perfect measurements are spot on.
And will nerves hinder novice winemakers Holly and James's efforts to concoct their very first batch?
Every last grape counts when you're a small vineyard like we are. Every little helps.
Near Colliford Lake, deep in the heart of Bodmin Moor, metal sculptors Gary and Thomas Thrussell are hard at work. For the past 3 months, they've been crafting the centrepiece for Codroia, a huge classical labyrinth being constructed to celebrate Cornish hedging across Cornwall's beautiful landscape. And their spectacular new copper and stainless steel artwork is due to be finished and installed in just over 2 weeks' time.
The deadline is approaching and we are getting a bit nervous because obviously everything has to come together all at the same time. So yeah, it is a bit nerve-wracking to make sure, it's perfect.
With the steel silhouette of the upper layer complete, today Gary and Thomas are tackling the tricky task of creating the lower section, featuring the copper pathways of the labyrinth.
We'll be softening it with a flame to 400 degrees C, and then it's cooled down, and then we'll be beating the channels out, the channels of the labyrinth.
Despite the frenetic action to hit their deadline...
Sorry, just be careful in that corner, that's all.
Gary knows a heavy hand at this stage could prove very costly.
The worst thing that can happen while we're beating this out is if it splits.
All right.
So the way we avoid that is make sure we don't do too much beating in one place.
I'm really pleased with how it's coming together, and the actual technique and the result is coming through, so it is really looking exactly what we wanted. The idea is that it's going to last 4,000 years, so everything we've done is over-engineered to allow for time and corrosion. The concerns are that we're not going to have enough time to get it to the right standards, so we've got to make sure that it does get up to standard on time, because other people are waiting for us to be done.
Just over a fortnight later, and after nearly 900 hours' work, Gary and Thomas are lugging their treasured artwork just half a mile down the lane to its new home at the centre of the Codroia site, next to Colliford Lake. But with the metal sculpture weighing more than half a ton, a crane's been drafted in to lift it into place. Artistic director Will Coleman is itching with excitement over its arrival.
Big day for the project today. Here we go. That artwork that has been lovingly created by the Thrussells is ready to go. And I was immediately struck by Gary and Thomas's idea that when you get to the middle of the labyrinth, you find a labyrinth. So it's a labyrinth within a labyrinth, which is inside the labyrinth of the cosmos of your mind. And I loved that.
Will knows it's going to be a ticklish task to slot it into its mount of Bodmin Moor granite.
We've now got to see if their millimetre perfect measurements are spot on, whether we can get it perfectly level. Let's do it. Can we have another pair of hands on here? Thomas, you stand up.
With just inches to go, a rash move now could damage this unique sculpture.
This way, come my way.
Go!
Finally, it's in.
Look at that. Look.
Yeah.
And it's only when the plates and fittings are removed that they can appreciate just how beautiful it looks.
Well, until that comes off, it's not real, is it? Until that whole thing comes off.
Will's brief to Gary and Thomas was to create a timeless centrepiece, which would be a fitting feature of the Bodmin landscape for centuries to come. So what's the verdict?
I love the contrast between the sharp cleanliness of the steel and then the granite. What you've done here is something which will age at a similar rate to the whole labyrinth. Yeah. But if it's not working properly in 4,000 years, I will be up.
You'll be
come round.
You want a refund?
It's also been designed with a perpetual feature to collect rainwater, which will flow around the concentric rings and drain at the centre. And it's time to test it out.
Wow, looks great.
I don't think that's bad at all, gentlemen.
It's working just how we planned it.
Yahoo!
There's still many months of work ahead to finish the Codroya site. But this timeless labyrinth and its new centrepiece will be an enduring celebration of Cornish hedges for many years to come.
We're so pleased with how it's looking. Imagine when it's all complete and all the outer hedges are all finished. It's going to be a hell of an experience for people to walk around and then come to the centre and see Colliford Lake in the distance. So it really makes you feel really proud about actually contributing something really significant to our community. It's a real honour, really.
At St Martins Vineyard on the Isles of Scilly, new owners Holly Robbins and James Falconbridge are taking stock of their grape harvest.
7?
Yeah. So 11 altogether in this though.
Nice. It's not bumper crop, but it's a good start. It's our first year, and yeah, it's exciting no matter what we get, really.
With the harvest gathered in, their mentoring by the previous owners, Val and Graham Thomas, has finally come to an end. And now they are in sole charge of the winemaking process.
It's really nice that we're now in a position that we can just be kind of going for it, and we know what we're doing, and it's nice to have the knowledge.
Off it goes.
Ready?
Processing the grapes is first on the list, as they need to be destalked and crushed, ready for pressing.
So the stalks shoot out the back end, and the grapes and the juice come out this side here. So this is what it looks like when it comes out. The skins have been split, they've been through the rollers, so they're ready to release all the juice now. So it's nice and sticky, this job.
And with 110 kilos of fruit to go through the machine, it's a time-consuming job as they begin to fill the hydropress with the crushed grapes, ready for the next stage.
We've got to be very careful with this because every last grape counts when you're a small vineyard like we are. Each little bit of juice is another contribution to a bottle, so every little helps.
Once the grapes are filled up in here, we'll then inflate this with water, and it will just gently force the juice out into the pot, and then we'll put it in the tank. It does take a while, the whole thing. There's no shortcuts, there's no quick way of making wine.
They may only have been on the island for 8 months, but life has a completely new flavour for the couple.
I don't think we ever planned to end up living and working together, but to be honest, I think we get on fairly well. You know, you're all right.
So far, so good.
Yeah, we tolerate each other just about. So far, so good. Yeah.
It's nice because back when we both had our previous jobs.
Yeah.
We'd end up through the summer, you know, we'd see each other at weekends and that would be it. So it's actually really nice just to see you every day, see you properly now. It's good.
As the last of the grapes goes into the press, the first signs are positive.
The very first bit of juice coming out.
Funny old colour, isn't it?
But to really see results, they need to crank up the pressure.
I've got to keep my finger on this little valve at the top here now because we're filling up that balloon inside with water. And then when we start gurgling and the water starts squirting out the sides, that's when the pressure will start to build inside.
And as the press does its work, Holly and James can finally see the fruits of their labour.
Beautiful, raging torrent of grape juice pouring out into the bucket.
Once pressed, the juice goes straight into the fermentation tank.
It's kind of crazy to think that after a year looking after these particular vines, the Orions, and a day of picking from 6 different fields, it's all in one tank.
And as the last drops go in...
There we go.
Job done.
Orion 2020.
Watch this space.
Their first ever winemaking is done, so Holly and James can now chill out and take a little time off to explore more of St Martins.
We're going to go for a bit of a walk up to the Daymark, which is a navigation aid. Fantastic, very kind of iconic St Martins landmark just out on the coast.
Where we used to live, you go for an evening walk when you get back from work and it would be along the streets and maybe through the park and under the street lights, whereas to be able to finish a day and go for a walk out here in wild kind of heathland in the evening after work is just fantastic.
It is totally amazing just to have these kinds of places on our doorstep. So on a day like this, you can, within like 10 minutes, you can just be in some of the most beautiful spots in the whole country, I think. Got a little seal just following us along down here, just cruising along with us. And then great views over to St Mary's and some of the Eastern Isles. So we're still learning the names.
How many can you do?
Not many, not as many as I should be able to. It's a small island, but I think you always, every time you go out, you find something new, something different that you've not seen before, and that's the beauty of it.
And the realization that this far-flung patch of heaven is now their home has yet to sink in.
It's still kind of hard to believe that we just came here on holiday, and first time ever visited the vineyard and just got chatting to Val and Graham, and to think that just chance conversation, right place, right time, is what kind of set us off on this journey to completely up sticks, leave behind our old life and start something completely new in a totally different part of the world. It's such a privilege to be able to call this home. I mean, this was never in the plan. We never even visited until a couple of years ago, but it just absolutely gets under your skin, and it's, yeah, I think we pinch ourselves every day. So lucky to be able to call this home.